Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? All right, so you all are good. You're gonna be loaded. You're hiding. I just want to know what we're working with.
High energy.
Radio, I'll take you, and hopefully, Stacy and the rest of the group can get you all out into the high energy. Because sometimes that's what it takes to tell your story effectively. Tend not to like the hello, we are here to help people. We hope that you get help by what we do. Most of the time that is not that is not compelling and does not move people to support. My name is William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege of being the Community Impact Manager for the Office of Broadband and Digital Equity, which is a Baltimore City unit within the overall Office of Information Technology. I remember how all these things fit together. Today, we are having this panel discussion on telling your story using data. This was a follow-up to the event we had last year, preparing your organization or preparing for funding in 2026. Some of you all attended that, where we talked about how to set your organization up, how to engage funders, and how to figure out what you needed to do and who you needed to have on your team to prepare for 2026. And now we're in 2026. And some of the feedback we got from attendees was that they needed some more help and some more expertise in how to tell the story of their organization and their organization's abilities, commitment, and impact on the communities that were served. I want to say thank you to Robert W. Deutsch Foundation and Gretchen. Timing is everything. Gretchen is our point of contact here. We wanted to say thank you for the use of the space. They've been great partners in all the work that we do and get done throughout the city. There are snacks that you all saw. There are snacks outside in the hallway. Please feel free to go out and grab something to eat. I've sat through many a meeting, and I know how difficult it is to focus when your stomach is rumbling a little bit. So I don't want that to happen, because if your stomach is rumbling and you can't focus, then we won't get good evaluation scores. No, seriously, I need you to focus on that. That's part of your storytelling. We'll be talking about qualitative and quantitative data and all those things, and getting good evaluation scores is part of that data set that you can provide to your potential funders and your partners. The bathrooms are through, you head out this door through this area, and it's on the other side of the partition, right through here. Yeah, right through here. You can go, this is a slidey door right here, kind of like a pocket door, so don't try to push. Slide, don't push, slide. Okay. And the bathroom's on the other side of that. This is being recorded for people who are not able to be here, and also for posterity. That is the OWL. It's a wonderful device. It picks up the whole room's kind of 360, and well, maybe 360. I don't know the math on the OWL. I'm gonna stop talking about that part. But I want to say thank you to Raphael and Lisa from our marketing and communications team for managing that part of the process. Okay, so the purpose of what we're doing today is to make sure that you all as participants feel comfortable using data and information to explain the value that you add to the people in the communities that you serve, to feel more comfortable identifying team members that can contribute to explaining the social impact of your organization in a way that will give funders and or sponsors to provide funding, and to feel more capable of identifying the organizations with whom your stories will resonate. We have a panel. One of our panelists, I believe, is running late. It's Kenya Osley. She is the director of the Office of Broadband and Digital Equity. But we have Amanda, Stacy, and Moira here. They're going to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them and their organization.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Amanda Lucas. I'm the director of the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. We are a data repository and warehouse for community data about Baltimore City. So what makes our sort of data unique is that we look at data at the community level. So if you are doing a project where you're trying to sort of understand the landscape where you're working, where you're looking to kind of identify the characteristics of people who live there, of households, of we have 8 subject areas that we go on and on. However, we have data that can kind of help you understand the community where you're working or that's around there.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. High energy, right? High energy. So my name is Stacy Price, and I have the pleasure of having owned 2 digital marketing agencies where we serve not only for-profits or nonprofits. So in 2012, we started Aiden, AIDEN Marketing. I'm the co-founder of that, and just recently just launched Decoded Marketing, where we still leverage a lot of marketing, digital marketing, but tied into data science, because that's something that's really of interest to me. And so over the last, since 2012, we've been doing that. Not the nonprofits, this is the audience that I'm speaking to, but the nonprofits, we've worked with local nonprofits, schools, schools, universities as well, who have public health initiatives. We've also worked with some local daycare. I won't say names of clients that have federal funding, and then they need to make sure that their enrollment is up to par so that they don't lose their funding. And clients in Chicago, across the country, different nonprofits, and helping them to actually not only respond to RFPs, but some RFPs today, actually, we've seen and have been asked to help with a component that asks specifically, what is your digital marketing strategy, or what is your digital marketing component in regards to whatever services that your organization is going to supply. And then we also help them on the back end, making sure that they get their word out and that they're touching the communities, whatever that is, behavioral intervention, again, enrollment, whatever that you're serving, right? How do we leverage the technology that is out there today to make sure that your program services that you're providing are really making an impact? And then how do we tell the story, right? How do we tell the story effectively so that you can either gain funding, and then on the back end, how do you show your results?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Maura Prada-Tuono. I'm the Chief Development and Communications Officer at Wide Angle Youth Media. So we work with young people ages 10 to 26 in Baltimore City and the surrounding area. And we're really working with them to provide the tools and the skills to tell their own stories. So when we talk about this idea of storytelling and impact, storytelling is really at the heart of what we do and what we're trying to create in terms of opportunities for the young people that we engage in our classrooms. So I'm just excited to be here today. Yeah, middle to high energy, right?
Middle to high. All right, so let's just jump into it. If any one of you want to start with this, how important is it for how important is storytelling for an organization when they're looking at getting funding? Because, from some people, they may think so long as we have results, we can just show the data, here are the numbers right here, so just give us money. Or we have what we promised to do is going to be so compelling that you should just write checks and give us money. How does storytelling, being able to communicate that, how does that fit into acquiring funding?
Sure. So like from the nonprofit perspective, to me, it's incredibly important. I've only done this work at Wide Angle Youth Media. And so for me, as I said, storytelling is so embedded in what we do, that it is a critical component. And I think for me, that means there's a lot of different ways to tell a story. And I think we're going to talk about the importance of data and interweaving that in. But at the heart of it, like we all, I believe that we all are working for organizations. It's not a question of whether or not you change a person's life, right? But it's how are you doing that and what does that mean? And so I think really honing in on that for whoever you're talking to and knowing that as communications and development folks, because we are like a mid-sized organization now, but for a long time, we're a small shop, right? So I'm the person, at one point, I was writing all the grant reports, writing all the narratives, also working our social media, we're kind of doing it all. And I think that can be really exhausting, but I also think it positions us, it can be a real strength, right? Because I can understand kind of really deeply that impact in a lot of different ways. And then the way that we're sharing that, whether it's on social media or in emails or in a donor conversation or in a grant report or request or like an initial call, right? Like it's gonna always be there and it should be there. And the more that you can really hone in on your specific why and how and what that means for someone in a way that is asset forward and empowering or uplifting. And I think we'll get into that in some of the other questions, to me makes such a difference. We talk a lot about, there's so many directions to go in, but like, we live in a very sort of doomsday world right now, at least it feels like that to me. And I think that as much as you can center hope and positivity, like we all still want to be a part of something greater and better than what it is. Your storytelling through both data and anecdotal evidence and just describing what you do, I think it just, it really invites people to come along with you. And I think as an invitation, not as a request, not as something transactional, but we're in this together and we're making something positive happen. I think that's how I really try and think about things.
Sure. Is it okay for me to ask the question?
Yeah.
Sure. I always like a reference to the audience. So how many people in here have nonprofits that provide some type of educational services, whether it is adults or children? Okay. Who has something to do with public health, substance abuse, behavioral, mental health, anything like that? Okay. All right. What else did that touch? Who has another type of services being provided? Because I didn't see all of them. Hands go up.
Provide employment services as well.
What kind?
Employment.
Employment, yes.
I work for grant writing.
Okay, so
Graphic designer, visual storytelling.
visual storytelling. Okay, great. All right, and the reason why I asked that is because I just want to make sure that we are speaking the right language to the right place. The marketer can be, sorry. So, but how important, the question was, how important is storytelling in regards to, it's everything, right? But let me first also start, because I'm an analytic and analytical person and an IT professional. I truly believe that people lie, but numbers don't. Right? So data is,
I believe the numbers lie all the time.
right, it's about right where your sources are, right? But I do really believe, I mean, it's a cliche, you've probably heard that before, but it's really important, right? Because if the data going in is bad, you're gonna have data bad, you know, whatever your input is what your output is. But storytelling is everything, and I'm quite sure if you've had a nonprofit, if you've even only written one grant request or responded to one RFP, right? The statement of need is the key, right? It's the element of where you want to really tell the story, right? But supported by data, supported by, you know, real facts, as well as, I know we're gonna get to the part about some emotional, right? So how the words and the flow and different adjectives that you want to use during that part. But in addition to that, anytime that you also have your appendix section and you can put visuals to convert that data into something where someone, because you know, grant reviewers, they are just looking through 1,000 applications. So how do you make their application different, and how do you show your data, whether it's on the needs and using possibly information from Baltimore neighborhoods. Baltimore neighborhoods initiative, right? Using data from them or the state or federal data, how do you take that and show that in a way that someone can say, oh, hey, yeah, that makes sense. So this is the need, and this is what they're doing, and this is who you're serving. So I just think, it's very important, storytelling, and how you do that on the front end before you get the grant, and how you do it on the back end are equally important.
Let me interrupt with an announcement. Can you, Leslie will not be joining us today. She has been caught up in an emergency. So I thank you for your understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, with all that, I frequently play the contrarian on panels like this, and I'm not, you brought me here for the data perspective, but I think the other side that I kind of wanted to bring to this is, I think I want to acknowledge in the room that a lot of y'all aren't trained as storytellers, right? You didn't go to school to write books or to structure a narrative, right? And I personally, when I get the sort of tell your story better advice, I kind of just want to say, well, screw you. Like, and what do I mean by that? Well, story at its core, and I'm gonna bring it all the way back to elementary school, is 5 things. Who, what, where, when, and why, right? And I think that the most effective sort of grant writing that you can do, the best case that you can make, is when you distill those questions down to their sort of core, to their core. And I'm not saying that putting together that who, what, where, when, and why is easy all of the time, but the questions that you need to be asking yourself are, who is your org? Who do you serve? What do you do? Like, what are your activities? Where are you working? Like, what are the environments that you're working in? What's the time that I'm working in? And what motivates your work? That why. That sort of last one, the why is the bigger one. But at the core of what you do, at the core of what that storytelling question is, yes, it's emotion, and yes, it's sort of making cases, but it's those 5 questions and your ability to sort of get robust evidence that can support those cases, I think gives you a better foot forward in front of a grant maker. So while I think everyone's going to tell you to tell that good story today, I'm going to tell you to think structurally and think efficiently in that. Because the more you get bogged down in these questions of like, is this the best case for me? Is this the best story? Am I telling sort of the best thing? You got to make sure that those like constituent elements are there.
Let's continue along those lines. As we start thinking through the story, and especially as we focus, to you have talked about need in a different way. One of the challenges that's not unique to Baltimore City, but is definitely something that I've seen in some of the grant applications that I've reviewed in other parts, other careers and things I've done before here. And also sometimes in writing and working with organizations to write grants or write art responses to different proposals is how do you balance between the, oh my God, look how horrible it is for those people and how we're going to come in and save those people and their lives are so horrible and I'm going to come in and I'm going to save them as part of the story and depicting the need in a way that, to be honest, sometimes seems more overwhelming than it is possible to address. How do you balance sometimes those tropes and those ideas, for example, with some nonprofits, I used to go, nationally representing Baltimore. And one of the things that I would get consistently is it really like The Wire there? Have you ever literally I was on a panel they asked me had ever been shot at. I was like, I would live in DC at the time, not in Baltimore, so that's different. But like that was part of that was part of for people outside of Baltimore, for a lot of them, this kind of this desperate, very gritty place is the backdrop of the need. And so if that is what you're dealing with, how do you define the need? Do you kind of play into those things? Do you say like, hey, it is horrible here. This is why we need your help so much. And you being part of this is gonna help us ride in on our white horses and save everyone. Or do you push back, and how do you manage that narrative, that storytelling, utilizing kind of those elements, especially like Stacey said, the need is the part that is central to even the evaluation. So how do you start there when sometimes how do you describe the need and sometimes it just is really so overwhelming?
Clarification, I'm just asking for a point of clarification. So are you asking, how do you balance it when the reality may be so grim?
No, that's not. So for me, and it could be that I see Baltimore differently. I kind of see the hope in Baltimore. It has never been as grim as it is described to be by people who don't live here.
Correct.
It is like for people who don't live here, I think one of the elected officials said something like, piece of shit place or something like that. It's one of them, somebody said it. And that's not where I live. I've been throughout the city and that's not where I live. But again, if there are people who are writing checks, how do you play into those tropes when you're talking, when you're writing the story, when you're telling the story about Baltimore? Do you write the how bad it is, this is horrible and I need you, this is why I need your help? Or do you use this opportunity in the story to give pushback to that?
So I think the world of philanthropy is really large.
Mhm.
And I think if we're sort of talking about, and I'm gonna make generalizations, but if we're talking about what philanthropy looks like in Baltimore, then I think we have a pool who's very interested in you matching your program to the community context, knowing who you are serving, knowing what their needs are, knowing what the context you are working in. And I do think that that is a priority in sort of questions that get asked in sort of grant applications. And you will see them in terms of storytelling and like, what are your outputs, what are your outcomes, and what's important for you to measure. As you sort of work your way up the chain to sort of national philanthropy, they're gonna tell on themselves, like in those applications. They're going to tell you what matters to them. And being like a discerning development person means being able to match what you understand your organization's story to be to theirs. And so I think that there is discernment in if you are going after those really big pools where, you know, there's 150 national applicants for 5 different spots. You got to do that work of sort of understanding is what I'm measuring in the context I'm working in, what they are working for. And in that, you could be perfectly matched up 100%. Doesn't matter how good your story is. Your odds are 5 out of 150. I'm not going to divide that math right there. But there's in between on. And there's going to be those one-on-one kind of development conversations. If you're working with like individual donors or sort of if you were trying to cultivate a donor base, that can be those type of like places where you might have to kind of, you know, you have to ask your values a little bit, and you have to sort of understand, you know, what is the story I'm willing to tell in order to sort of meet the needs of an individual or like a family-run foundation. Those are sort of, it's about matching kind of the environment to your own positioning.
So to answer, I think that was good. But to answer your question, William, I would say that no, you don't fall into that whole like, whatever other people have their perspectives of Baltimore. I think as your organization is actually applying, and it definitely does have to do with what level, like, you know, national organizations or foundations, they will definitely, it's a larger pool, and they will definitely in their applications let you know what they're looking for. I think part of this conversation about storytelling too, the fact that I would definitely encourage all of you who have nonprofits is that don't wait until the RFP comes out to start telling your story. Right? So you should be telling your story in everything that you do right now. So whether that's social media, whether that's your e-newsletter that you send out, whether that is a gala or a fundraiser that you have, every event, some kind of way there's an element of storytelling about what your mission is and the impact that you are making and the people that you are serving. Does that make sense? And that also helps you when you are doing that on a kind of consistently incremental basis, also helps you when it's time for you then to do, you know, respond to an RFP or you talk about what's grant. Because you're already doing the work. And then you can go back or you can have someone on your team, you know, the development person or a writer, like review and be like, okay, let's change these words a little bit, but you have the essence. How many of you have like had to cram and try to do like, respond to a grant or a grant application in like less than 48 hours? Correct, right? So you know how sometimes you like burning the midnight oil, it's a difference if you already have some of that story together versus if you don't, right? And then, I totally agree with Amanda, right? Who's Amanda? Just to make sure I'm really big with people's names, get it right. So, but when she was talking about the fact that, making those connections and also as you go beyond Baltimore, I mean, of course, your program is Baltimore, but if you're looking for funding that is from sources that are outside of the state, then look to see, which you probably are already doing, but if you're not, look to see what have they funded in the past? Like who they really are passionate about. Like there are some initiatives, like I remember one time when I was leading an organization, where Verizon, and people were like, oh, they would think Verizon was just big on tech, right? But Verizon had a division that was really big on domestic violence and supporting that. And so it's about really doing your homework too, so that when you're writing your story and you're kind of matching it up, what you do and how that fits to what they want to fund. Right? Or how's it that what we do, how can this line up, or how we, or if we're building or designing a new program that we're trying to launch, how does that fit in with what the funder is looking to fund? And past evidence, past conversations with people who have been funded previously, and conversations with the development managers, is very helpful. Yes, sir.
Slightly different note.
Oh, and I'm sorry, that, I'm not, sorry.
Pay attention, you know.
Who's the moderator?
I don't know if this is applicable, but how do you tell your story in an elevator pitch? You are in an environment where decision makers are. You may be on the same elevator with that person. And it may come up who, you know, who you are, what you represent. How do you position oneself in your organization for the written narrative down the road? If you don't, if you understand what I'm saying, the pitch.
Yeah.
To the individual or individuals at that meeting, in maybe 60 seconds, perhaps a couple of minutes. So that down the road, you know, you may want to circle back and apply for something, you're positioning yourself for that. So,
Sure. I mean, I think that's in general, all of us who are in business or who represent an organization, you should be able to say who you are, what you do, like in a very impactful way to anyone, right? And if you were in personally, if I were in an elevator beyond the meeting, but if I'm in an elevator with a funder, 9 times out of 10, I'm not gonna pitch my whole, because I wanna build, it's about building relationships, right? So I'm not pitching personally, this is me, I'm not pitching in the elevator. However, I'm gonna have a conversation where at least, you know, I can exchange and get their information. Then come back later if there's somewhere that I'm at a meeting or an event that's different. It's just the nonprofit, the nonprofit industry is totally different for like on for-profit. Things that I would possibly do on a for-profit side, I wouldn't necessarily do them in the same way on the nonprofit side. Because it's a different kind of animal in regards to how things flow and how deals get done. So you can, so you can be right now, requesting for grants. There's organizations that I work with where the grantors call them and say, will you apply for this grant? Right? You can get to that point. That's a different.
So, you want to answer the question before?
Sure, I think so quickly. I mean, I think to your question, when Amanda said who, what, where, when, why, like that should be fundamental to whether it's that quick conversation is what I do. I think you'd be interested. Could I set a call? You know, that's if I'm in a networking space, I'm doing that kind of thing. But I think to the bigger question of like, are we reinforcing tropes? We talk a lot about like reinforcing, intentionally not reinforcing the wire narratives that are so common. And at the same time, I think that, again, emphasizing that like the young people we work with, the communities we work with, they are resilient, they are strong, they have so many assets they bring. And I really try, even when I'm asked that like doomsday, tell me your worst case scenario, I really try and start there. At the same time, I try and use some data points, whether I'm talking about our workforce programs or arts programs or educational programs. You know, here are a couple of data points that we're looking at. that are true. Like the realities of Baltimore are that it's complex and challenging, right? Like it's not simple one way or the other. And I don't think it's for our community. Not- But I don't try and harp on it. I try and move through it quickly and get to where I want us to go. But I do think, for me, I think, and especially if you're talking to like a national funder, they don't know Baltimore the way that we know Baltimore, right? I'm not from Baltimore. I'm very clear on that, but I've been here like 18 years now. Like I know it a bit. I'm raising my kids here, I've been here. And it's complex. And I think that it's important for a national funder or someone who's just not right in the city, to give them some understanding of both sides of the coin, but like quickly and succinctly. Because you've got to get to, the who, what, where, when, why, how, that message.
Yes, sir.
So, next question, I'll make a statement of question. So you have your story, you have your numbers, you have all that together, right? Speak to getting into the right rooms to be able to talk to the right people, because right now we're just chasing grant. We don't really know that, even though we follow all the directions and stuff like that, it's more so like the lady was saying, it's about the relationship, right? So when they see your, if you're building a relationship with a organization or individual, and they see your application come across their desk, they're more likely to pull. So speak to getting in the right rooms and also identifying the individuals who are well connected in Baltimore that can guide you to the right individuals that can help your organization.
Start. Yeah, that would be start. Okay, so I mean, I think I can start, sure, I don't know, I don't know, either way, however. Okay, so, I think that's a great question, because relationships are so important, right? And someone opening that door for you makes a tremendous difference. And I'll say, so I'm in my role, I have our executive director, and this is a space where we really try to be more intentional. And it's not like a short term, right? Like any new relationship, I'm like, this is gonna be a 12 to 18 month runway. Like I'm not expecting an immediate turnaround. I'm assuming we're gonna have a lot of conversations, even if it's someone and I'm just asking them, hey, you came to one of our events. It seemed like you really enjoyed it. Could we grab a coffee? I just love to know more about how what we do aligns to what you're interested in. And then I ask them in that conversation, who are 5 people you know who should know about us, who might not? Could you help me, connect with them? And I ghostwrite, all the intro emails, like I'll do all the work you need me to do if it means that I might be able to chat with this person. But it's like, it's a long journey and not everything turns into a grant. But I find that it's an opportunity to invite people in and be part of our impact. Not everyone is going to be a guest artist. Not everyone's going to be able to make a donation, but there are so many people who are excited and have a variety of resources to share, right? And it's really about like building out that web of support. But you've got probably board members who could be helping you with this. You've got other folks on your team. I've been really trying to push our team to think with intentionality. What spaces are we going into? Who do we know that's going to be there? What are our networking skills? What's that elevator pitch? What are the 3 things I want to ask these 3 people? And really trying to work on that, because I think it really does help. I think it's a great question. So those are some of the things that we do or that we've started doing to build out some of that. So I don't know who's going next.
I don't necessarily think I had an answer to that. I want to sort of advocate for the experience of grant writing as being part of how you think about cultivation. And what I mean by that is we do a lot of collaborative grant writing. We work in teams of 5 on a big project, and that could be anything from sort of a public health project that needs sort of a local data component, but it could also be more programmatic, like we want to do outreach somewhere, but we need a lot of partners. And I never write those grant applications thinking we're going to get them. Never do. I don't plan, but I think that they are really important tools for building out your relationship, because it is so easy to take a pre-existing sort of grant application and then put it in a lot of different directions with people. And if you're working on a team of 5 different people and you know, that one person, they know stats really well. You've got this other project where I need a statistician on, you pull them in to that. And that's, I think, the flip of the coin of the kind of like external cultivation work. Like at the very core of that is showing up and being in the room and not turning down like invitations, even if you don't want to get out of your office that day. I have that day more often than not. However, you show up and you say hi and you make sure that you're present. But I think the other side, it's that relationship building that happens in the process of like articulating your values over the course of a project. I think that's a really powerful element in sort of advancing your organization as well.
So the question was about how do, Sarah, I just want to make sure I have the question correct. How do you get into the rooms or how do you connect with the people? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's, in a nutshell, basically.
Okay. All right. So I think, and of course, Baltimore. Baltimore, there are a lot of spheres of influences. Most people don't know the organizations. Most people every day, don't know the organizations where a lot of the influences reside, right? Not just on the philanthropic side, or the philanthropic side, but also for business, right? So the key is, I think, if this would be kind of a strategy. If there are specific funders, whether they're private foundations, whether they're other nonprofits, or whether they're businesses, say, i.e., like, how many of you are familiar with the bank? I'm just throwing out one bank, all banks have. Right, they have a community development division, right? So you should become familiar with those people. You should actually try to introduce yourself to those people, making the connection. I also think that you should be where they are, meaning that if you can, everybody cannot, but if there are specific types of events that are for them, that are open, that you can attend, even if that means there's an investment that you need to make of $100 ticket to get into the room, then get into the room and be very intentional about who you want to meet while you're in the room. That means go to LinkedIn, look up their picture, know who their name is, do the homework. So then when you're in the room, you can catch it. And even it doesn't have, you're not doing a full, like, let me tell you everything about us. You're trying to make a connection. And then you develop the relationship. And as Maura said, right? Maura, I keep putting an A in her name. What Maura said is that sometimes that relationship is a long time, right? But it's also about your follow-up. Like, William knows me, I'm the queen of follow-up. The queen of follow-up. If you talk to me, you say you want to do this, or you have a question, I am the queen of follow-up. I also have, one of the reasons why one of my mentors, right, sits on this round table. How many of you are familiar with that? Couple, right? Most people don't even know what the President's Roundtable is. President's Roundtable is an organization that has existed in Baltimore of African American business owners who rose $1 million or more. As invite only, right? It's just like you should know who are the people who are part of GBC, Greater Baltimore Committee, right? Very influential. And so again, those are people who, whether their organizations or their companies may fund or make an investment, but they can also, if not directly, they can indirectly introduce you to other people, right? So in Baltimore, just like any other city, like you gotta find out who the players are, right? Who are the players, who are the people who make, who have the influence. And then possibly, once they get to know your story and impact, if it has something that they're passionate about, you might be really surprised about the introduction that they make to you.
One of the things to kind of extend on is making sure that you understand that the people that you're trying to meet are not just two-dimensional caricatures of what you know. I remember when I was young, very young, my mother was a mother and a wife. I remember one time I called 411 and asked to get the number to her work. It's like, well, what's her name? Her name is Mommy. I don't understand what you're asking me. For me, that was her identity, her entire identity. A lot of times when we go into homes, we go into you're a funder. Okay, I'm going to engage you as a funder. These are human beings. Please never forget that part. And because they're human beings, they're connected in ways. Their social structure is not just all I do is I show up to work and I write out checks for grants and then I go home and I lay down and wake up the next morning and do it again. I may volunteer at the animal shelter. I may be actively engaged in my religious institution. I may like sleeping. I may like playing with my kids. I may go to the dog park. Like there are so many other things. And so making sure that when you do get an opportunity to go into these rooms, that you're going into these rooms to understand people. Because it is, having been on both sides, it can be off-putting when somebody just rolls up on you and is like, I want to check. I'm trying to get, what do I need to do to get you to write me a check or invite me in? It's like, well, hello, my name is William.
Right.
How are you doing today? This is not all I do. And then some of it is like, who are you and why do I care? And again, that's harsh, but those are the two questions that you need to make sure that you're able to answer in these conversations. Who are you and why do I care? Because everybody is coming to them. Especially the larger institutions, I know that you write $50,000, $100,000 checks, everybody's in line. So why should I care about you? What makes you different than anybody else who's going to be talking to me throughout this entire evening?
So what makes you different too also is that you have that conversation and that contact, right? It's about being a follow-up king, a follow-up queen, right? Do you send, is your practice that you send a thank you email? Is your practice that you possibly do something that people don't do today, is actually write a handwritten thank you note and mail it to them? Those type of things make you stand out from the crowd because
I was just gonna kind of say, kind of riffing on what you were saying and a little bit of what we talked about here. So like places, as I've been over the past probably 18 months trying to be more intentional in where I'm showing up, there are, like the Baltimore Banner has different events where they'll line up like this incredible list of speakers. And I'm like, if I could even connect with 3 of these folks, it's like they're already talking. So I could just say, hey, I really appreciate what you said about A, B, and C. It made me think about this. I'd love to follow up with you. You know, like it doesn't have to be a long thing, but it gives me a point of entry, right? If I'm at an event like a fundraiser for, you know, a school partner or something, and I see someone who I know, and this happened to me last year. There's a guy, his family foundation had been supporting us for a couple of years. And I've emailed and I've tried and I like just never got a response, whatever, that's fine, keep trying. And I read his name tag and I was like, oh my goodness, it was like this poor guy. It was like, I don't know, 7:15 in the morning, and I was like hyped up on caffeine. And he was probably, I'm sure I took him by surprise. I was like, oh my gosh, we have been in communication. I'm so glad to see you're back in town. I just want to say thank you. Your family has been doing this for us. What do you think of, you know, this show, student work? You know, how are you connected to this? And we had like a great conversation as people. And now, you know, he's someone that I've gotten to know a little bit. I've been able to reach out and say, hey, my understanding is you have this expertise. We're trying to grow our social enterprise. Could we pick your brain? And it's like a way to just, I'm not asking him for money, because I'm not, but I am, it's like just a point of entry. So I really try and think when I'm in these different spaces, it's hard to be like, here's me and everything about me. But if you can ask those folks questions and you can hear something that connects to whatever you do, whether it's, I like to play with my kids, I like to play with my kids, and they love our programs at White Angle. Like, they love to come in and they do ABC, and it's so fun, and I wish I had that when I was a kid. And like, I just leave it there, right, you know? And I ask for their contact information, or if they're really high up, they have like a gatekeeper and a scheduler. And if I'm going into a space like where I know I'm gonna be encountering those folks, I'm like, who is that person? And I'll try and find it out, so I know I can go to them and say, hey, I just had a great conversation. Can I try and get on their calendar, you know, can I try and get on their calendar in the next couple of weeks? Just sometimes no, sometimes yes, follow up with handwritten notes, definitely. That's like the old school, I feel like it really does need to stick out at this point, and it takes work.
Yeah.
So yeah, just wanted to add that.
I had a question, as I was sitting here thinking my question, I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. My question is, how do you tell you started using data when the issues that you need to tell that's happening, but there's no data apparently.
I would like to talk to this one first. Have data on everything you do. And I would say if you are at an organization and you don't think you have data, you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to count. And I know that sounds like really, really basic, but we work with a lot of organizations who are trying to understand what their programs are doing or what they're not doing. Many of you don't know how to count. And I mean that in the best way possible. You are so in the weeds in understanding, in doing those programs and making that sort of person-to-person connection. But you need a spreadsheet that says, we did this event, this many people came to this event, it happened at this time at this place. And you need to sort of take a step back and say, what's really important for me to understand about my organization, and how am I going to set up that system to count it? Because the story that you tell is my organization runs 5 programs in Baltimore City where we engage with youth in teaching them the arts. But when you can count it and you can show we did X, Y, and Z, we're really focused on community impact. We do it through these different things. This event served 300 people, and this event served 50 people. It can be that basic. Sometimes you're going to want to get in the weeds, and you're going to want to count things like demographics, males, females, race, sociodemographic. You can do surveys with folks, but your sort of basic questions that you should get on a registration form is, what am I doing? Where am I doing it? How many people are coming? And then you get to jump into that story, right? But you need to be able to kind of really articulate that core, how did we do the thing that we do? Your data is there. You should have to do it. And I believe that across the bigger, you got data.
I asked that because the issue that I'm trying to serve is that social workers gatekeep resources for youth that are transitioning through foster care. So there is no data on how many social workers say, okay, here's this program or here's this funding between these things. There's no data like that. But as a professional, I've seen it happen. I guess that's where I get the data at, from those who say, oh no, my social worker never said it. I would have to create my own data.
Yeah, and all of us do. You need to have robust data about your organization or about the work that you do. And it's really it's going to sound very basic. The way you name your Excel file or your Google Sheets file, that's what matters to you, right? That naming convention for your file, that's my value. So if my value is tracking, I'm going to say, from that example, negative interactions with social workers. And you're gonna start documenting those things. If that's what's important to you, if that's what you articulate, you need to find a way to collect that. Because you can't. I would love to show up in the room and say, I've noticed this big problem, this huge problem. Okay, I used to live in Mount Vernon. There's dog poop everywhere. I complained about dog poop every single day for the 7 years that I lived in Mount Vernon. Would I have had a more convincing argument if I had a spreadsheet with picture documentation of every single instance of dog poop? Sure, but no, I was just an old man yelling at the wind at that point in time. To get in front of a funder, you gotta systematize it a little bit. And the way that you structure your information, that's how you get to that story to test.
I just want to add, because I was thinking about this, and I don't know where we are in the question list, but on the other side, when I stepped into my role at Wide Angle, overseeing our development and communications, we were putting together a 2-pager annual report with a few key performance indicators. And then in whatever grants we had, it'd be total youth served in each of these programs, whatever.
And it was like very scattershot, and I was pulling this like specific to whatever my like report or outcomes were. And so I have an amazing senior communications manager. And she was like, you know what, we're gonna update this annual report and we're gonna templatize it. So we know every data point that we are collecting year over year, it's gonna align to what we already have to pull, generally speaking, for our various types of funders. And for us, that's workforce focused, education, and then arts. And then we're gonna know what we're doing, like an apples to apples comparison, and it's like easier for us and also easier for the teams that I work with that I have to pull that from. So fast forward like 6 years. In addition to our annual reports that like you can look at them and see the growth, I have another sort of spreadsheet that's like, here's all the data that we hit from starting at FY 20, all the way now to FY 25. So I can say, here's 6 years of data. Here's the average over 6 years of our high school students who are with us in the spring and their graduation rates. And I can say then, what's the average for seniors in high school graduating, on time for Baltimore City? So I've got like a data point, but I now have this sort of bigger picture data that I can say like, okay, something's happening here. It's maybe not just because of us. Many other things may have changed, but this is what we're seeing. And so for us, and now when I think about like a national funder or a bigger regional funder, like not just the folks that immediately know us, I can say we really are seeing A, B, or C. So when you get there, because I know you're like, just what do I even collect in terms of why do I need funding? But thinking about that longer term, and sort of templatizing it or capturing it year over year, then you really start to see your own benchmarks, which then help you as an organization. And the other thing I just wanted to note is that we're spending a lot of time talking about data for the why, like your needs or your outcomes. But another really big part of all of this is the data that you have on the folks who've been supporting you, and not just what you can look up on like GuideStar or Candid or whatever, but like literally, who was my donor? Who supported this crowdfunding campaign? Was this campaign around a new camera for my high school students? Then that means they like high school or equipment. So I can follow back up with them and say, hey, you made this, as gift towards this. Now we have another need, and can you step up again? Or could you, would you be interested in this again, right? So I think that the storytelling and the data collection not only go to like opening funding, but retaining funding, right? And you can start to really use that side of it as well.
Yes.
Sir, you had a question?
Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation, but I think we might have started 3 steps above where a lot of people were in the conversation,
Okay.
right? Because that question.
I was gonna say, you're starting,
Right, because that question was really about what's the relationship between the activities I do every day and the things that are happening in the lives of the people that I'm interacting with.
and if I can just to ask, I didn't respond to your question, but in my head, I was asking, I wanted to know, are you just starting a nonprofit?
No, it's a for-profit business.
Okay,
And I launched back in 2022 in Richmond,
okay,
not in Baltimore. So
Okay.
I'm now currently here in Baltimore expanding.
okay.
I
So your point about no data was about the fact of social workers.
Right, so the reason why I do this work is because I had my own lived experience being in foster care.
Okay.
So I seen the gaps as someone who was in the system, and then I came in was a professional, and so I also seen the gaps as a professional.
Okay.
And so looking at why our youth are aging out unsuccessful, why are our youth aging out homeless, why are they not having that stability or that support? And being a professional, well, I took my experience, which was that my social worker didn't tell me about a lot of the stuff that was
Right.
there. And then as a professional, I seen that other professionals, again, was doing the same thing, or saw was that a lot of soldiers just didn't care, like for the older people. And so it's like, we have a lot of these grants and programs that's for like youth development, ending homelessness and things like that. But it's like, in the spaces where these professionals are supposed to tell these people about these resources, they don't. And it So it's like, how do I take the fact that that's actually happening? That's
So
one
your
of the
data,
reasons why
yeah.
youth are aging out unsuccessful.
So your data point, which I'm quite sure you probably already know, because you're not gonna get that 9 times out of 10 from social workers who are not doing the thing, right? So your collection of data is definitely, like, even if it's a short survey from the actual youth who are transitioning, right?
Right.
Aging out of foster care, and even possibly adults, I mean, fuller, older adults who have been out of foster care for a while, and doing a survey with them and asking about their experience.
Yeah.
Just talking about, just trying to get to your point about it.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying, things like, I'm just have to create my own data when it comes to that, do my own research instead of, because this is a issue that, people are not collecting data on, they're still collecting data on mostly the general aspect, they're homeless, they're incarcerated. But like, why? But then you get to the point where it's just like, why, like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You don't be sorry, because I think that's the illustration that I think a lot of people came to the room to understand, which is what's the relationship that you're trying to explain between the work you do every day and the people you have? And sometimes that data doesn't exist or it's a counterfactual, right?
Right.
It's not the thing that people should be doing, the normative thing that should, but the thing that's not happening, right? And so so it's the thing that we all observe. I live on Green Mountain, and every day I go up and down Green Mountain and I see so many young Black men who look like me, and I wonder, where is the intervention in their lives that was in my life that would have never allowed me to be sitting on a corner from the morning to the afternoon? Right? And a lot of folks in this room are the interventions in the lives of the people that they serve. And so what I'm suggesting here is building off of the work that you do, using the very basic language that is evaluative, meaning how are you assessing what you're doing, will move you into those rooms that you want to be. Because evaluative thinking and evaluative articulation is a strategy. It is the thing that gets you invited into a room. It is the thing that gets people to ask you to come to places and to show up and be introduced to other folks. It is also a strategy, not just a tactic.
Definitely.
Cool. Thank you for that. That is actually really, really helpful. And that actually brings us to the next question on the list. Thank you. Nice segue. Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is just that's just a guide. Just a guide post. So that we can make sure that.
We're just on the hot seat.
Yeah. So if you have a new organization, if you are, if you don't have a lot of the data, if you are looking at the world from the interventionist perspective and starting off or that type of in that type of circumstance, how do you prepare yourself to go into these rooms to tell your story? Do you just use the anecdotal evidence that you have? Do you just have like one good story which you love? Or do you use other people's stories? And so as a new organization, how would you all recommend moving forward in the storytelling? That's that.
New organization, brand new, haven't provided services yet?
I just do both. Organization that is brand new and I don't have stories, but I know what's going on and I want to engage, I want to help, and I need to get some funding so I can help, because that is a place where a lot of work is finding so. And for others, this is either a new program or a new lateral venture, and I don't necessarily have information about. So, for example, when our office started, one of the things that we did was we distributed 50,000 Chromebooks. We didn't know we were distributing Chromebooks before. We're a government agency. We don't do those types of. We didn't do those types of distributions. So that was we were established. We had done things, but not that. So situations where either you're brand new and don't have data in anything, or you're starting a new venture. How would you tell the story about what you will accomplish? Aside from just trusting them.
So, yeah, no, ahead.
You have to gather evidence to demonstrate I mean, I think that's kind of at the core of whether you are starting a planning grant to plan to do something, whether you're saying, I think that, you know, I think that there is a challenge here. This is how I've observed it happening, but we need to do planning to actually like identify audiences. So for instance, I'm working on a grant right now that's a planning grant. That's where the half of the grant would be planning, where we know that there's a lot of like basement sewer backups in Baltimore City, but we know that people don't report it for a lot of reasons. Are there data and indicators that we can use to predict where basement flooding might happen? That's a question that we can ask. So how do I gather that information? We know that other cities have studied this before, so we can pull from that literature and understand what data they flagged. We can talk to DPW and we can say, what is your modeling, your water modeling showing in these areas? There are different ways to gather that sort of preliminary justifiable information that would give us enough evidence for a grant application to say, okay, this group is confident enough to do that. That's one form of data gathering that you can do if you are doing a planning grant. It's saying, you know, I know this problem. This is what evidence from other places is showing me. This is what, and then this is how I would do it in this particular context. So that's gathering external sources, moving forward. Now, if you already have a program, you have evidence based on that program. You might not have impact data yet. And look, you have a program, you're not gonna have impact data a year out. You are going to have outputs and like maybe some outcomes. You're gonna know who participated. You're gonna know the kind of basic questions. You might know like engagement numbers, like I reached out to X number of schools to do this program. These number replied. You might be getting to like some type of, they had an outcome in the program. They did not know anything about manipulating a PDF at the beginning, and now at the end, they can all build beautiful PDFs. That's like an outcome data. So if you have that sort of preliminary information, share that. Tell those sort of stories, but it's fine. You've only been there for a year. You've only been doing it for a short time. You do not have to say like graduates from this program are set to change the world. Speak within like what you can actually define and measure and recognize that you are not going to be at the same stage as someone who's been doing work for 20 years or 50 years or something. You have a lane, stick to it, and just really define what those boundaries are. And then I think the long term, like we want to build on that. That's when you're kind of like getting into those really messy issues of like, oh, how do we demonstrate impact? Like, how do we kind of take the wealth of knowledge that we built over a long duration of time and synthesize it in a way that helps us make decisions? And I think those conversations, those require your board, those require your community, they require full staff input. They need to be kind of collective because people are going to see different things about your impact than I'm going to see from my vantage point as a director, or your marketing person's going to see from like their vantage point. So you have to bring in a larger sort of group for that.
I think to add to what Amanda was just saying, especially for nonprofits that are just starting out, like you're brand new or maybe a year or 2 years, goes back to look at opportunities to collaborate with other nonprofit organizations. It may not be doing the same exact thing that you're doing, but it's something that complements and that you're trying to serve maybe the same people, the same neighborhoods in a way. And so that affords you the opportunity, maybe they're more experienced, have been around longer, but affords you the opportunity to do something together and get some data, more data around that you'll need in the future or what have you. But I think, it's the one thing that we know and we see there are, just full disclosure, I'm a former IRS investigator. So I help people at times with organizations, have helped them to get their 501(c), right? And so what I see a lot of times is that a lot of people say, oh, I want to have a nonprofit, I want to have a nonprofit, I have a nonprofit. And sometimes that conversation that I'm having with them is, do you need to start a brand new one? What can you partner with someone, or if you're, or can you, just anything, just so that you can make the impact. If you want to serve the world, it doesn't mean that you have to always have your own shape. Right? Because there's power in collaboration. And especially when now, in this society that we are right now, there's so many dollars are being, pulled away, especially, from federal, I'll say that part. And, but there are other sources, right? But I think it's really key, just piggyback on what Amanda was saying, is that really look for opportunities for new brands, startups, look for opportunities to collaborate.
I would just add, I mean, you all covered a lot of it, but I think, the woman who, was talking about the foster care system, right? She is very uniquely positioned with her lived experience to be a person to design an intervention because she experienced it firsthand. And I think she said also she has social work training.
Right.
So if you're in the beginning, I think like a key question is why you? And like, it's very clear why she would really understand this on both sides in a really important, impactful, unique way to find a potential solution. So I think whether it's an organization or it's a new program that you're exploring, what's your track record? What's your previous experience and expertise that you are bringing to help support or launch this initiative? And I think at Wide Angle, over the time that I've been there, we have added new programs and opportunities to our offerings, right? And so when I am writing a grant for that, I'm very clear that like, this is what we've done so far. And now we think this is a potential next step. And we are coming to you because we want to pilot something. And I use that word pilot because to me, it's like I'm testing something out. I'm hoping that my hypothesis is clear, but it kind of like builds in my mind. And maybe there's a funder here who would feel differently, but in my mind, I'm just being very transparent that I'm expecting these outcomes based on whatever data points, either my own or maybe a peer or partner organization in another part of the country that has tried something similar. And, this is what I'm expecting, but you're helping me test this so that if successful, we can continue to provide this intervention. But I think that just that framing, that part of whether it's a conversation you're having with the funder or it's just only in the grant request, as much as possible, just being really clear on that, I think is also, to me, it just feels like appropriate. And we receive funding for pilots. And there are some funding opportunities that specifically look for opportunities to fund pilots. And so they're very open and receptive.
So, everybody, I got another little baby. My name is Rosanna, and I'm the business development manager at Rustone Community Health. And we're in the Silver community, so we're like right off of like Green Spring Avenue.
There's Sunny.
53 out right by side. We're like in an enclave, right? So it's like kind of hidden in such a way. A lot of people don't know about it, but we've been around for 40+ years, right? As a nonprofit, we've only been around for almost 3 years. So the thing is like really getting people in the neighborhood, especially this surrounding Park Heights neighborhood that I live in. It's really getting like the neighborhood knowing what we do and being able to gather data for the programming that we want to start, right? So in terms of pilot, we want to start like an access fund for healthcare. We have about 15 practitioners, acupuncture, yoga therapy, massage, all types of just wonderful alternative health modalities. But the thing is, we want to be able to have a fund so the neighborhood can be subsidized and we can use the programs and the services. So what would be, I guess, a good appropriate data for, being able to let funders know we want to create this program, we want to create this fund. We have existing practitioners, but we just haven't had, the community and in the way that we wanted to have them in the program. Is that?
So are you seeking funding for the fund or seeking funding for outreach to the community or both?
Both. It will be both, mostly for the fund so that we can offset the cost that the practitioners would do. The practitioners have supported us in the past, but they haven't been compensated. So we want to make sure, that we're honoring them for their services and their expertise, while also being able to provide the services for the community, as well as health education classes too. So not just services, but education as well. So it's kind of like a unique thing. We've been there for decades, but as a nonprofit, we're right.
So, yeah, but you have a history of what you have a history of providing the service.
Yes.
And then the unique part is now that you would have the funds to be able to offset or pay for the cost. People are coming in.
Yes, and really because of where we are, I was hired, I'm a new hire. But one of the reasons with that is because it's been seen, it's in Ruskin Mansion, right? So it's been seen as like an elite status, even though that's not what it is, it just has a title mansion. But we wanted to make sure the community knows this is for us, this is for you all. It's literally 5 minute like drive from my house, but the neighbors on my block, I told them about it, like, where? They don't even know where it is, right? So it's a availability and awareness.
You have awareness.
Yes.
Mhm. So the question on the table is, so we understand what you're trying to do. So your question on the table is,
Because that's the way to have like to gather data for this new like access fund and everything.
so you really are speaking to the statement of need of the Park Heights community
Yes,
from a health perspective.
from a health perspective.
Maybe there's tons of data that, you know, you can start here, there's some data here, and, but, you know, Baltimore is really, you know, Baltimore City Department of Health, there's loads of data, like, break down the need, you know, and I know even, what is the park, was it Park Heights Renaissance?
I'll bring them. I'll
Right, I mean, you have a lot of data points that you can get, I think that that can help, you know, there's evidence basically, right? The need as well as the need for you to have this fund because people, their incomes, the people that you're serving, right? I think you have a lot that's there that you can create this story, and then the question is, and then who do you go to fund?
Also, you know,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing you. They know each other. They know each other.
because I work at Park Heights Renaissance. And I also work with like the vice president, because they just started a neighborhood association. But one thing that has not been made public is that Park Heights Renaissance is actually building up our health and wellness cohort. And so that's something that you would likely need to be in that conversation, because we want all the medical practitioners and work providers in the space to be able to take. Because as we know, Yolanda was big on collaboration and coming out of silos off. But yeah, so I'm not.
Do y'all do any work with MedStar Health or with like Center of Hope or Lightbridge?
We do, absolutely.
With MedStar, with which ones?
So we do, we actually have it very diversified at this point. So we have Lightbridge, we have Five. We also have, what's the place, Park West. And then we also have, there's another group, so they specialize in, older adult, like maintaining their ability to age in grace at home. And so that's also another department that's come on as well. So it's no exclusions, if you will, as long as you're willing to partner with others, understanding to the point you made earlier. If this is your subject matter expertise area, stay there and pull this resource in to supplement your work, right? And that's essentially what the ask is for any partners that are coming to the table.
I just wonder if you could do something like, it sounds like you're also saying that there's like this misperception of the physical space.
Physical space.
And maybe this isn't the right fit and there's like a better fit, but I'm like, could you do like a spring or summer like block park? So like that's what I'm thinking, look out like something that just welcomes.
It's whatever house, that's the, and I'm all about tea.
Yeah.
I love my tea, so I'm not that type of tea, not the shade tea. So I love like inviting people in and having teas, water meditation, leading them through things, like, you know, this road for a reason. But just like really inviting people, making it known that we're here, this is what we do, we want you guys to utilize, you know. That's one of the conversations I'm having now with our, she's open to it, she does, it's just new for them, they just haven't done it, so. Yeah, but I want people to look around, do what we do, and then we can say, hey, and this is coming soon.
It seems like things that are publicly visible, like bright balloons, like just things outside, and then also like the childcare side of it.
Yeah,
You know, and if that's offered for like when parents are coming in, like definitely advertise that. It's
Yeah, I know that's the barrier.
Yeah.
And just to also follow up, one of the things that, as you are having the conversation, following again, some of the data that you may already have, is there a waiting list? Are people actually coming to, because as, you know, from a funder's perspective, I said it earlier, I am not a big fan of trust me, bro. Like, if you give us the money, then all of this will work out. I've worked with a number of nonprofits where plan was incredible. The funding, they got it and they started rolling it out and people were like, yeah, no, we actually absolutely need this, but we're not going to go there for whatever reason. Yeah, one was the childcare place. They had slots available from a funder where you could just bring your kid in and there was no cost to it. And those slots never got taken up. And so there are some funders who have been burnt by things like that before. So one of the things that I have seen is that your ability to say that, hey, if we open our doors, people will come through. That can move funders in a particular direction. And so being able to speak to the outreach, like you said, you've had people who have enjoyed the services or utilized the services in the past. If you had evaluation from them, you have stories from them, testimony and things like that. Like I've been here, I've had acupuncture, and the outcome of this is the output that's happened is the impact it's had on me. You're able to take that to the funder or the potential funders, whether those are individuals, corporations as sponsors or what have you, or whether they're traditional philanthropic organizations. You're able to have a much more compelling story about the idea that if we build it, they will come. Except that please don't use that phrase because if you've ever seen the movie, that applied to ghosts, not to actual. So I don't know why people keep trying to act like that's a real thing, but it's not.
And then you also have the fact, we have a lot of people throughout the country who are having challenges with healthcare and loss of healthcare coverage. So that's also something to look at in regards to backing up. I mean, as people come in, because you may have people say like, hey, yeah, I do need to have something, I can't pay the bill. And there's a whole probably big, research to be done on the fact of people, the impact of what's going on with health insurance right now.
I want to sort of zoom out from the kind of small use case here and just talk a bit about sort of these neighborhood data, which is which BINA sort of provides this on our website, BINADayoflife.org. We have something that are called community statistical areas, which are composite areas that, so they are not neighborhood level data. We do not count population in Park Heights. We count population in a larger area. There are reasons for this. I'm not going to bore you with why we organize data the way that we do. However, because we take this approach to it, we have 150 different metrics that you can utilize to sort of articulate your where. So who lives in my community? What are their demographics? Are they old? Are they young? Are they aging? Are more kids sort of coming into the space? How many students go to school in this area? We collect some health information as well. We have things like how many murals are in a community. We have that data. It's all free. It's all publicly available that you can use to sort of give people a picture of like the vibrancy that's in your community. We try to be as asset based in our data as possible. We are, we have crime data, we have stats on vacancy, but all of this is not to sort of like rate one community over another. It's to like track what's going on and to understand neighborhood health. Something I hear a lot in sort of conversations about community engagement is making sure that the engagement is matching the community. A like simple example here is if everyone in your community is using public transportation, which is a lot of Baltimore City, and you hold an event that you need to drive to, they instruct you, that's a mismatch. But the other side I want to bring in here is I think it's actually okay to speak that back to the community as well, because I've been in plenty of meetings where that are in low transit access neighborhoods where the three folks who have cars come in and talk about where their parking space is going to go with this. And I think like some of our role is sort of using data to sort of say, that doesn't like match what we hear. And I think that's a really good engagement point, because there's always a gap. between like what administrative data sources are saying about communities, and people normally want to get into it. And I, you know, I like a good fight, but, I think that that's like a worthy conversation to engage people in, and can be kind of these like starting off points when we're talking about engagement, when we're talking about the people that we want to bring in a room. And sometimes they're not gonna match at all, and then you also get to say authoritatively, we did this outreach, it does not match our community. What do we do differently next time? So it gives you those kind of like touch points, and you don't have to do that kind of data gathering either.
Told you from the beginning, right?
That's how you set a website.
It's BNIAJFI.org, but I got cards, 'cause I like paper.
And we'll also include that, make sure you check in, we'll also include that in the follow-up email. And I'm saying it loud enough for Raphael in the back, who is responsible for coordinating our follow-up email, hint, hint. All right,
And lastly, I was gonna say, I think, you know, having a strategy to, target or deal with the challenge about awareness. Because that sounds like, yeah, a big, that's really, yeah.
So we're talking, we've talked about stories, we talked about identifying needs, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Let's talk about whether you need a different story for different populations, or is it best to maintain like a level of authenticity or integrity to have one story that you just shop around and so you find the match? Or do you need to have kind of a multiple stories depending on who you're trying to get funding from or who you're trying to partner with?
Well, I mean, off the cuff, what I would say in response to that is that you can have one story, maybe with a little twist, depending again, as we talked about earlier. What is the funder interested in funding? Right? So your story in essence could be the same. However, when you're talking to funder A, you may know like, oh, well, they're really interested in funding things that deal with middle school kids that are in STEM. You're doing something with STEM, but maybe with high school kids, right? So how do we kind of match that or change that up a little bit, or what have you, or talk about how, oh yeah, we're doing something with middle school trajectory. I think you don't change, I think you keep it authentic in regards to who you are, what you do, what you're willing to do, who you're looking to serve. But as we talked about earlier, really matching up when you have the opportunity to do your research about what funders fund, having conversations with people who are making the decisions, finding out sometimes even when you don't win, when you apply for a grant and you don't get awarded the money, making sure that you call the person or call the organization back and asking them, hey, can I have, can I set up a meeting with you so you can tell me, where did we fall short? Because that's really important. And that could be so, of an advantage to you for the next time. So I don't think that you change your story. You don't have different stories for different people. You have a core story and you may have to tinker it to meet what the funder wants to fund. That make sense?
So this is not gonna be useful in all cases, but I'll give the advice anyway. When I'm writing a grant, I start with the budget. I have a budget template in front of me. I have hours that staff can be allocated to that. I've got supply costs for it. And then I figure out what my story is from there.
Makes sense.
If I have a $10,000 grant, that is only so much staff time. I can only make so many maps during that time. If I need to do 3 workshops, I know I got a minimum supply cost when you factor in food, you factor in space rentals, you factor in stipends, you factor in childcare. That's like $30,000-$40,000 of a grant, right? The narrative that I can pull out of what I can actually do fundamentally comes down to how I can spend money in a grant. And I think that this is even more important when you're working collaboratively because the pot's got to be split up in different ways. But I always start with that budget, and you can adjust on it, but that's the clearest outline that you are going to get, because if I can only have 8
staff hours on an entire project so that the work can get done, well, then you don't have, like, you don't have project management on it, like, you were just getting maps. So understanding what you can do in time, understanding if you have staff, what your staff can do, what their strengths are, having a good understanding of what their hourly allocations are on things, that makes that transition into your narrative a whole lot easier. So I've got folks I've written plenty of grants with, and we just sit down and do a budget first, and then we go from there. And then we write out, and that's how we define roles and responsibilities, that's how we define objectives, that's how we define scope. And so I think that's a pretty useful way of getting to that shifting your story question, because for me, the story shifts if it's $5,000 versus if it's $100,000. Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I don't actually start with the budget first, but I'm like, what is the amount? Because, what is the amount? What's the focus area? What are these folks interested in? Because that's gonna dictate everything. Whether it's like, this is $5,000, okay, it's gonna be a very small chunk of one of our programs, or it's gonna be a standalone. What are they interested in? I also look at, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's like, we operate in sort of like an intersection of a couple different, forms of engagement. So if it's an arts and culture funder, I'm gonna lead with that. I'm still gonna talk about, our workforce, our education. I'm still, of course, that's still part of our story. But I'm reorganizing, like I get like a little nitty gritty, but I'm like, the first thing they read, what's my topic sentence? Like, what's my why? What's my how? And how does it connect to this? So I'll list even like our focus areas, and I'll switch them around based on whatever their interests are. I look at what are the keywords they're using in their RFP that describe the work that I do. And if they're saying that they, I don't know, do workforce development, then I'm not gonna put like vocational programming. I'm gonna say workforce development. I just try and reflect back, like, our work is the same.
Right.
But I try to really make it so that a reviewer sees themselves and their priorities in our work as much as possible. Something that I think Stacy mentioned much earlier is this idea of using your attachments wherever possible. And yeah, if you've got press, put a press attachment. If you've got awesome photos, put it in. If this is a scenario in which I'm submitting a PDF and not going through like a wonky portal, I embed photos with captions. Like, I really try to make it stand out. To me, a photo is worth 1,000 words. I think that's very true, and they can just see it differently. They can feel it differently. And then I think also, I don't know if this bleeds into the next thing, but maybe it does. There's the things I'm required to do, and then there's the things I try to also do, right? So like the handwritten thank you card with the formal acknowledgement, or I have to do an interim report and a final report. But if something really great happens in a classroom, then I have 5 minutes and I can get like a behind the scenes photo and just send it out. Hey, you made this possible today and it was awesome. Just want to say thank you, right? Our donor CRM has video capabilities. And so when people make a donation, I have gotten really good at talking at my computer screen, and I have like hey, this is Maura. Thanks so much. Your donation is gonna, help us meet our goal, and we're so excited to engage high schoolers. I say their name, I send it, right? It's not perfect. I mess up. I don't re-record it unless my kids are running through the screen and the cat is jumping. Like, it's like a little rough and ready, but I think that again, it's okay because that's authentic. Like, we live in an AI hyper polished world, and it's okay to just be. And I try to lean into that a little bit. And so I think that's part of also, it's not differentiating, it's not a different story, but all the storytelling, it is still like moving everything forward, right? It's keeping them engaged, it's helping them understand, it's celebrating. And I think that that's really.
Oh, I'm gonna get up on my own soapbox here for a minute, too, just because we mentioned AI. Right? The darn thing yourself. Like, please, like, use your brain and put it to work. I just read 75 cover letters. I know which ones were you sitting down and writing those 5 sentences, who, what, where, when, why, of your story is so much more impactful, and it gets you thinking about it.
it gets you thinking about how do I tell that story better? How do I put these pieces together better? Sure, some computer can spit that out for you, but like resist it. It's resist. That's all.
I was gonna say the other thing too is, and this is just like a general, when I have like a newer team member who's working on grants, like economy of words and like character counts, I'm like, don't flop, but like there is a lot of additional, like, there's one more data point, there's one more story, there's something that I can add in here, I'm gonna use it. I'm like, don't leave a ton of extra space unless you really have nothing to say, like,
Right.
because it's just an opportunity to tell your story. And the other thing that I really try and do is wherever possible, weave in quotes from our participants. Because again, I can talk all day, but just hearing a young person talk about impact in their own words is so important. And I mean, like, youth voice is like embedded in our mission. So like, it very much is appropriate whenever possible to do that too.
Couple of things that I also want to recommend that you do, because a lot of us approach it from one perspective. We are the ones out looking for money. We are the ones sending things like, hey, can you please give us money? Can you please give us money? Would you please give us some money? We would like for you to give us some money, and any other variation of that phrase. See if you could get on a scholarship review committee or a grant review committee. Being able to sit on the other side of that and to watch these applications come in and have this thing, because talk about stress. When we had to do our digital equity fund, we're sitting there and one of my professional highlights was that in the last digital equity fund, we had I think it was like 60 applications and 50 of them were fired. I've done application reviews before, and that number of them being good is not common. But having to sit there and then you realize, well, wait, you only have this much money. Oh, I want to give it, I'm looking for money in my own pockets. Like, oh, can I help this organization? But you sit there and you have to figure out, how do I take this? And before we did this, it seemed like a lot of money until you're trying to divide it against these organizations that some of it's like, I want this child in this community like to be changed like this, but I only have this much. And it puts you in the position of having to think that through, so that when you are on the other side, like, hey, I am looking to get money from an organization, you have a better understanding of the nuances that reviewers have to look at to make these decisions. Because one of the things that I do entrepreneurship training, and one of the things that I tell my clients is that your business will never make money. You will never make money because the only place that makes money is governments. Your job is always to get money out of someone else's pocket and put it into yours. The same thing with these grant applications. And sometimes those decisions that people make have nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. It has something, you don't, talking about applying for a job. It could be that we're only interviewing the first 10 people that meet qualifications, and your application happens to be number 11. That had nothing to do with your worthiness. You might be qualified in all other 10, but you just happen to have. So as you are starting to take a look about funding and telling your story, get on the other side if you can. Volunteer. And by the way, some of the grant review positions, they pay. They pay, some of them pay. So, if you can get on it, do that. Yeah.
Something else I just wanted to share as a resource, this isn't having AI write it for me, but sometimes, like the Summer Funding Collaborative, for example, some years they'll have youth reviewers or community reviewers. And for me, I want to make sure that whatever I'm writing is accessible for the reviewers. So I just wanted to share that you can input your responses to, it's called like an online, like reading level assessment, and it will tell you, this is reading at this. And so then I just want to make sure that I'm tailoring it to be understandable to whoever is reviewing it. Or if it's just a couple of the questions and they say like, these will be read by you, I'm like, okay, I want this to be at like a 7th grade reading level. Like I want young people to understand what the opportunity is. And that's like a free resource if anyone just needs that kind of thing. It's available online. And then you can just simplify what you do.
Now we're gonna open it up to additional questions. If we've gone through all the ones that we had. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Kim Pelham from the Digital Harvard Foundation. I know you guys mentioned touching on programs that are new. So my question or something that where I'm at now is, I have a program that's 2 years old. We have federal funding, but it's a struggle getting people in the door consistently. So
You mean
on paper,
participants?
yes.
Okay.
So on paper, it may look like we're not hitting the numbers that we said we would. So my question is, how do we craft a narrative around that word so that we keep the funding and we address that we are new, that people don't know us, that we're putting out our outputs, but there's a lot of distrust and things like that.
So, may I ask you, what type of program is it?
It's a digital navigators program.
Digital navigator that's supporting in the schools and the library where?
So in a computer lab, so it could be in HBC residence,
Okay,
or it could be the lab.
okay. So Digital Harvard Foundation, you're training the digital navigators.
Correct.
And when you said people aren't coming in, that's what I'm trying to connect that.
So we have our training, we train our members, but then they're deployed into the community.
Okay,
So they're doing outreach, they're passing out flyers, they're going to events, telling people who, that they're available, that we're here now, you come to see us. Some do come. But other locations may not have consistent participants here.
so, I'm gonna speak from the marketing side, the IT side, and the cultural side. Right, so what I'm hearing, in reference to digital, so there's a whole technology gap, right? In regards to how, sounds like, I'll say, low income neighborhoods as well as people of color, right? Use or don't use technology in the same way that some of our Caucasian counterparts do. That's just the truth. I'm talking to somebody who has over 25 years of IT experience, okay? So you have a marketing challenge, you have a trust challenge. So, and then flyers are probably not the best way to engage the residents, I would just say personally, right? But if you're digital, so the question is that what is the benefit? What are the benefits that your navigators are telling these residents, whether they're in housing authority residents or whether they're at the library? What's the benefit? What are you telling them? What if they come into a training, what are they going to learn? How is it a benefit to help them? Not what you think it is going to help them do. What is it that what is their challenge, and how, if I sit with Maura, who's the digital navigator, like, oh, like, I'm gonna say, I would say, I'm senior tech support for my mom, right? So, oh, I wanna pay my water bill, stop driving down to Holiday Street or whatever to pay the water bill. But I gotta sit and show her that's what she wanted to know how to do. I think in the different communities where you are sending your navigators, if you have not already done so, the conversation that needs to be happening face to face or on the street is that what do you need help with? And using this thing that you have, or we all have in our pocket, because they have this, we got phones. But the question is that what are the challenges? Or like, oh, I really like to talk to FaceTime my granddaughter that's living in Ohio, but I don't know how to do it. I need an email address, maybe not. Some of them have, some don't, right? How do you use that? But I think is that if you can really, it's almost like if you think about when officer friendly, or what we used to say, officer friendly used to live in the neighborhoods, police officers used to be in the neighborhood. People knew them, right? Here is that you want to navigate, they have to build trust, right? They have to be in the neighborhood. But if I know that more is going to help me do what I'm having a challenge with, then I'm gonna come in, and then I'm gonna tell everybody else on the block that this is what happened. Or maybe I wanna order something from, what is it, what people use? DoorDash, Instacart, all that kind of stuff, right? How do I do that? I heard that that's possible, but I'm sick, or when I get sick, how can I get that done? My mom's sick, I don't have a car. Like, think about the challenges and really talk to the people. I think that will be helpful. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. A lot of that work has already been done.
Uh-huh. And so what are you doing with that? Like, if you know the challenges?
So we're still positioning ourselves in where our participants would be. So we can build that rapport with them and build that relationship that makes them actually want to hear what we have to say. My concern is the reporting side of it. So do I tell the narrative, the one narrative success? There's been more, but
But you're saying your narrative is not, it's not what you want it to be. You're not meeting, your report's not reflecting what you would like it to.
yeah, so I guess my concern is, I know we're very new as far as digital navigation is concerned in the grand scheme of the digital divide. It's extremely new. And that's part of the grunt work that we're doing, but we still need the funds to do this work, this lead work. So my concern is, how do I still show the value in the work now so we can continue to get funding, so we can continue to build that relationship and actually meet the needs of that distrust that our people are experiencing.
Well, let me else that. Just real quick, I'll just say, have a conversation with me afterwards, because this is really a marketing thing, in many ways.
On a meta level, one thing all stories have is conflict. Like, all stories have conflict, all stories have. We are all going to get grants that we do not need the target output on. What is important is how you both demonstrate how you work towards those outputs, right? Like, so these are the activities that we did, these were the engagements. We learned 6 months in, we weren't getting this, so we did a landscape assessment to try and better articulate our community. You need to be able to tell how you responded to the conflict and the challenge. And I think that's probably your most important step in sort of the reporting side of things. Yeah.
And then I would just add, because we've all been in this position, it's just part of it, right? And I think it's also everything that Amanda said, plus, and now what's your next step? So like, you've gathered information, like even if it was negative feedback, it's still feedback, it still informs your next step, and you're very clear that this should continue. So what will you do differently, and what do you expect to happen with this continued funding so that you can get where you want it to go?
So it reminds me of two things. When you said that, I thought about immediately like safe streets, and the fact of needing to build trust in neighborhoods, and, depending, some safe street officers or teams were more effective, and the others, had jeopardy of losing funding, right? Because they couldn't build that trust with him. And then like, I had a client, a local client, where they do Head Start programs, right? And they had particular 2 locations that they were potentially going to lose federal funding. I'm talking major $1 million, right? Because their enrollment dropped. Their enrollment dropped the first time 47 was, 45, but he was 45, right? And the impact there to Spanish, Hispanic families who said like, hey, nope, I'm bringing my kid, nope, we're not, and so then, but the strategies that the organization was using at that time, and they weren't telling their story about the benefits about why families should enroll their kids fully. It's not just education, because they were doing wraparound service, they were doing a whole bunch of stuff, right, that people didn't know. So that's why I was saying, I think you have a trust issue, but you have a marketing, I hear the marketing piece, but that's my lane, right? So, but that's why, yeah, I think that, and then you can still do with, hey, yeah, this is what we did, but you want to turn the boat.
Yes.
You want to turn the boat, and there's a lot in there.
The other part too is making sure that this is not a surprise to your funder. This is not something that, when it's time to submit the report, should not be the first time they've heard about this.
Yeah.
If it is, that's going to be a problem for you. Because what you've done is you're talking and focusing, and that happens a lot with a lot of organizations that are heart-led or impact-led. We focus on the impact of the beneficiaries of the resource. We focus on how it's helped them developing trust with them. But by not talking to your funder in advance, you've broken trust with your funder. Because now they know, what else haven't you told me? Where are you, what else is going on that now I gotta look through all of your old reports? And now I have the responsibility of asking you all of these detailed questions. I can't trust you to tell me if there's a problem in advance. So again, making sure that you have the conversation, and it also, the benefit of having these conversations in advance means that you'll also have a lot more vocabulary to explain it in your paperwork when you submit it. If, the conversation that you have in advance, like, well, what, did you do this? Did you do that? Now, when you write your reports, like, oh, I did this and I did that, because they are the representative of the organization. And so you know the kind of questions that the organization is going to be asking, and you know what to include. And again, that helps you build trust. And it also, if you have a good relationship with your project officer, will help you understand any of the back office stuff that is not going to be found on any report. It's not going to be found in any of these other things, that you'll be able to have a better understanding. And because you're going to lose funding either way if you're going to lose it. This way it increases the likelihood, because the situation I mentioned before about them losing, the organization that had spots in their daycare and people just weren't coming. Well, as soon as they did all the outreach, they did what Amanda said, they wrote down all of how we went here, we did this, and this is what we're going to keep doing. And when time to submit the report, they knew they were going to lose the money. We had looked at, like, okay, so how are we going to backfill, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, no, won't you just repurpose that money? Because, from our perspective on the books, we've already spent it. So just you can repurpose it on the outreach that you talked about, which, real talk, nobody saw that one coming. We just considered that the money was just going to be gone. They were going to look at you, we can't trust you anymore, and you can't do what you said. But again, it was because that they did a really, really great job in communicating with the funder before the problem became emergent.
Right.
Who had somebody? Yeah, Jen? Question? Yes.
So I just wanted to offer in terms of what she said, the idea that you might want to find somebody that has a false purpose of what you're doing, like the panelists have emerging like deltas have emerging deltas and AKAs have emerging AKAs, and they have digital programs. So it might be that you partner with Panelytics and they already have to have one of these computer labs and they have to give these accreditations. So you don't have to do it. So there are people that are doing exactly what you're doing as a part of their mission. And if you're able to find those people where you overlap, you have people that you're marketing to that already have the need set. And I know it's several just because I'm in the digital realm. Like I used to mentor at a girls mentorship program that was in a school, and they have a computer lab, and the mentors were the computer lab person that ran it. So for her to have that, and she has access to 100 students, and it's a cohort that goes every year all the way through college, that could get your numbers with one relationship.
Collaboration is different ways.
Because it's a way for you to collaborate and get it done.
Thank you. I can definitely say we can pivot a little bit more in our partnership, because right now we're working with organizations who have a need, want to meet the needs of their participants, but don't have the staff to do that. And we provide the staff, and that's where we come in. But I'm gonna come and chat with you.
Well, we are at the end of our time. First, I'd like to thank all of you all for the Joyce Foundation for allowing us to use their space and hosting us. And wanted to give the panelists, wrap up, one sentence or what have you, and the thoughts that you want to leave everybody with.
Count. Count your things. Keep track of your program data. Like, that's your easy, I get the sense that we're stressed about telling our stories, and I'm always looking at structures that can alleviate stress. The better you count, the better your data is, the less stressed you are gonna be about putting it together. I was putting together a report today, just an example. I was really stressed because I had to like take a number and then I had to like use a method to make it a bigger number. It's not important what the number is. Then I completely forgot that someone had sent me those same numbers that they had like shared with us like months ago. And I've not kept good track of it. Could have saved myself like 3 hours of stress about like having to do this work by just taking my own damn advice. So just keep track of your data and be on top of it and like care about it as much as you do your programs.
So Amanda's word was count, or her webline was count, and mine will be to continuously storytell. I mentioned it earlier, right? You should be storytelling before you apply for a grant. So through all your means, all of your channels, social media, e-newsletters, to, following up with your donors, reports, testimonials, all of that, right? As well as the impact and the grand things that you're doing, and servicing people, whichever programs that you have. And then having that content, that data, as we were talking, part of storytelling, data, converting that into visual things, like, I don't know if I've actually seen and worked on, and I know Shantae has as well, in reference to taking an annual report and making it more of a visual, like, right? So very, very simple that people can see a potential funder. And so that's what I would say, storytell, because even outside of funders, your individual donors or your corporate donors can become repeat, consistent donors when they know the story that you're telling continuously.
I was gonna say all that and just make sure that you, not quite eloquently, but tell your story, make sure your staff and whoever is working with you tell your story. I'll say the other thing since, I don't want to be redundant. I stalk other organizations who I think are good storytellers. And I'm like, what do I like about what you do? How often am I getting communication from you? What do I want to steal? Not steal, but like, what do I want to make my own?
Borrow.
Yeah, borrow. How can I take it and uplift what I do? Like it, I just think that having other examples of what I think can be effective for me is the thing. Yes, I'll just encourage you to do that.
Right. Thank you all, everyone. Feel free. I know some of our panelists have to leave, but if you don't mind, stop up and say hi to them and let them know that you appreciated them. Thank you all very much and have a good afternoon. Oh, yeah, we need a picture. We need a picture.
I know.